George Orwell's 1984 shows power enduring by shaping what people see, say, remember, and fear. Published in 1949 after his encounters with propaganda and repression, in the 1930s and 40s, it depicts totalitarianism where surveillance is universal, history is rewritten, language is constricted, and emotion is ritualized. The United Kingdom in the 2020s is a constitutional democracy with elections, judicial review, a contested media sphere, and civil society. Yet, expanding surveillance powers, information management, speech regulation, and technocratic governance echo Orwell's warnings. This documentary compares mechanisms in 1984 with UK developments since 2000 and assesses claims about the Fabian Society's gradualist agenda since 1884, showing how well-intentioned reforms can cumulatively tilt toward complete control. In 1984, the state sees everything. Telescreens invade private life and informers saturate society. The UK has not fully abolished privacy, but its capacity to collect and process data at scale has grown markedly. Parliament enacted the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act in 2000 and the Investigatory Powers Act in 2016, consolidating bulk interception, acquisition of communications data, equipment interference, and retention, with warrants by Secretaries of State reviewed by judicial commissioners. Snowden's 2013 disclosures showed GCHQ tapping fiber optic cables and sharing data with the United States National Security Agency. Operators can be required to keep metadata for up to 12 months. Amendments in 2024 updated rapid retention notices and conditions around encrypted services. Supporters cite terrorism, hostile states, and serious crime. Critics, including Liberty and Big Brother Watch, say bulk powers invert the presumption of privacy and chill expression. Courts identified deficiencies and prompted reforms in 2018 and 2020. Unlike 1984, these powers are statutory and litigated. The similarity is architectural. The capacity to watch many of the people much of the time exists and relies on trust in administrators now and later. Language control in 1984 is explicit. Newspeak eliminates words to make dissent unthinkable. The UK has no state lexicon, but speech regulation has widened with online life. Laws used to police expression include the Malicious Communications Act 1988, the Communications Act 2003, the Public Order Act 1986, and the Terrorism Act 2000. In 2023, the Online Safety Act imposed duties of care on platforms to reduce illegal content and mitigate priority harms to children. Plans to regulate lawful but harmful adult content were dropped, but Ofcom can set and enforce codes with large fines. Proponents point to concrete harms. It is estimated that the UK currently arrests over 12,000 citizens per year for speech crime, more than any other country in the world, substantially more than China and Russia put together. China had approximately 1,500 arrests and Russia had approximately 400 in 2023. Transversely, people tend to internalize boundaries and self-censor before any policeman or government intervene. This highlights the ever-increasing policing of speech in Britain, as the numbers are increasing in light of this knowledge. The echo of 1984 mechanism is apparent in Britain today. Orwell's Ministry of Truth rewrites records so the party is never wrong. The UK has independent statistics authorities and a press that investigates. The Office for National Statistics and the UK Statistics Authority oversee figures, and the Civil Service Code mandates honesty. Yet narrative struggle is intense. During the pandemic, some worst-case scenarios presented in late 2020 drew criticism for weak uncertainty framing. The National Audit Office reported in 2020 and 2021 on transparency weaknesses in emergency procurement, including a high-priority referral lane for protective equipment. Regulators sanctioned campaign finance breaches. These checks show a system that can surface problems. Still, Professionalised messaging since the Government Communication Service in 2014, micro-targeted advertising, and real-time amplification allow constant repositioning of emphasis. The effect can approximate a memory hole by making settled public memory hard to form without a single ministry commanding the presses. Orwell states that the 2 minutes hate serves to ritualize rage. The UK has no daily state hate, but platform algorithms monetize anger and fuel affective polarization. People in Britain recognize that legacy media manipulate narratives to suit political aims. Newspapers amplify partisan narratives, and the UK people take to social media and independent media for their news sources. In this sense, the origin slightly differs from 1984, where the state orchestrates emotion. The social effect overlaps in the erosion of empathy and the crowding out of careful debate. Economic control in 1984 is absolute. The UK is a mixed market economy, yet central levers are powerful. The Bank of England, nationalised in 1946 and granted operational independence in 1997, sets interest rates. In response to the pandemic, the government deployed over £300 billion in support, and the bank expanded quantitative easing. Public debt rose from roughly 84% of GDP in 2019 to over 100% briefly in 2023 before edging lower after revisions in 2024. Consumer price inflation peaked above 11% in October 2022 and eased toward 2 to 3% by mid-2024. None of this is command scarcity, but rule by opaque technocratic choices is a public concern. Procurement controversies, lobbying registers, and scandals underline the need for transparency. Education and culture are decisive in 1984. Children are taught to report parents, which is currently happening in the UK. The UK's Prevent strategy, introduced in 2003 and updated in 2011 and 2015, places duties on schools and universities to prevent radicalisation. Prevent has sparked controversy where ordinary political expression triggered referrals. Higher education is reconciling safety with academic freedom under the 2023 Act, with continuing disputes about implementation. These conflicts show governance pushing into civic spaces. They are contested in courts and on campuses, not enforced by a single party, but the trajectory warrants vigilance. A growing concern is that surveillance is widening beyond data retention. Since 2016, police have trialled live facial recognition. Metropolitan police deployments in London scanned tens of thousands of faces per operation in 2019 and 2020. Vendors claim high accuracy under tests. Independent evaluations and civil liberties groups warn about false positives, demographic bias, and due process gaps. Biometric oversight is a patchwork. Tools that were science fiction in 1949 are now a procurement choice. With roughly 72 million mobile connections in 2023, near universal social media among younger cohorts, and cloud services central to commerce, the substrate for watching and nudging is thicker than ever. What of the Fabian Society? Interestingly, their slogan and emblem is the wolf in sheep's clothing biblical passage, which instantly starts ringing alarm bells in any sane person's mind. Founded in London in 1884 by Sidney Webb, Beatrice Webb, and George Bernard Shaw, it advanced gradualist socialism via permeation and evidence-based policy rather than rupture. It helped found the London School of Economics in 1895. It influenced early welfare thinking and had leaders such as Clement Attlee, who chaired in the 1930s and led the Labour government from 1945 to 1951 that established the National Health Service in 1948 and enacted nationalisations and education reforms. Later, Fabian thinking informed New Labour after 1994, including the minimum wage introduced in April 1999 at £3.60 for adults and rising to over £11 for the national living wage by 2024, and public service reforms. The Society operates as an open membership think tank affiliated with Labour. It publishes pamphlets, hosts conferences and lobbies. Critics argue that its technocratic temperament and incrementalism can smuggle extensive state power without public alarm. A stained glass window designed by Shaw, depicting a wolf in sheep's clothing, is cited as symbolic of stealth, which the Society frames as satire about patient reform. The fair reading is that the Fabian tradition is comfortable with expert-led administration and central targets. It did not author UK surveillance law, which was cross-party and security-driven, but its preference for state solutions fits within a system that accumulates administrative power unless limits are enforced. A compact timeline shows the drift. From 2000 to 2016, investigatory powers accumulated. In 2013, Snowden forced debate and litigation. In 2020 and 2021, emergency public health regulations under the Public Health Act 1984 and the Coronavirus Act 2020 imposed unprecedented peacetime restrictions on movement, assembly, worship, and commerce, with behavioural insights used to frame compliance. In 2023, the Online Safety Act created a new compliance regime with Ofcom oversight. In 2024, investigatory powers were amended again. Over the same period, there were general elections with changes of government and judicial interventions. The divergence from 1984 is fundamental, yet the growth of capacities to monitor, shape, and sanction behaviour is unmistakable and ever increasing. Statistics and names anchor the case. UK mobile connections were roughly 72 million in 2023. Fraud losses reported by industry exceeded £1 billion in 2023. Inflation peaked above 11% in October 2022. Live facial recognition trials processed tens of thousands of faces per deployment. Surveys since 2016 find notable minorities of students and academics reporting self-censorship on political topics in the 15 to 30% range. The UK COVID inquiry, launched in 2020 to examine decision-making. Fabian General Secretaries such as Sundar Katwala in the 2000s and Andrew Harrop from 2011 to 2023 published proposals that influenced Labour platforms. The stronger claim is this: the UK is not fully totalitarian yet, but its governance model has developed an increasing bias toward managerial control. Monitoring society is easy now, nudging society is easier, speaking out is costlier, taking the form of lengthy incarceration. The narrative is manipulated by professional communication outlets and platform dynamics. Legacy media that often omit, gaslight, or downright manipulate the news information to suit their political objectives. The BBC have been proven to have doctored President Trump's speech to try and show him inciting the Capitol Hill riots. Technocratic institutions accumulate discretion. A Fabian-style preference for expert-administered state-led solutions sits comfortably within this ecosystem, not necessarily because Fabians advocate repression, but because the same tools that deliver incremental reform also enable incremental control. Policy responses should match the risk. Surveillance powers must be tightly defined with necessity and proportionality tested, minimal retention, independent audits by default, and automatic sunset clauses requiring active renewal. Facial recognition should require primary legislation with strict safeguards, transparent accuracy reporting by demographic group, and public notice of deployments. The Online Safety Act should be implemented with a presumption in favour of lawful speech, clear appeal rights, and published takedown statistics. Behavioural interventions in public messaging should be disclosed so citizens know when nudges are used. Procurement should be transparent by default, with accelerated but auditable emergency pathways. Universities should protect pluralism and due process while meeting lawful duties. Parties, including those in the Fabian stream, should commit in manifestos not only to social justice goals, but to firm limits on administrative power and explicit rollbacks when emergencies end. The lesson from 1984 is not that Britain is already Oceania. It is that the machinery of control can be built step by step with good intentions and normalized until the line is hard to see. Drawing that line in law, in institutional culture, and in public expectation is the task. If Britain prizes liberty alongside security and welfare, it must make those limits as real and enforceable as the powers they restrain.